Hello, my name is John Altman. I'm one of the baseball coaches at Papillion La Vista South High School. My role at Papio South is I'm the head JV coach, and my area of expertise is primarily working with our pitchers. Today I'm just going to give you a brief breakdown of Bryson's pitching mechanics. We took some video at our camp in early June, and so we just wanted to give you some feedback on some things that we noticed. So we want to talk about some of our pitching philosophies at Papio South, and then give you some things to maybe focus on in order to prepare for next year. Okay, so when we look at pitchers' video, we primarily focus on their hips and lower half, especially early in the delivery. Okay, we believe that if we can get the first few steps right, the rest of the delivery mostly takes care of itself. Okay, those steps of the delivery that we focus on, we break it down into 5 phases. Okay, that's hip load, hip lead, hip separation, release, and follow through. Okay, we primarily focus on hip load and hip lead because we think that if we can get those 2 steps right, the rest of the delivery takes care of itself. Okay, it's like a domino effect. If we struggle with the beginning, it's really hard for our body to course correct and get the rest of the steps right. Okay, I've also provided an example here of Marcus Stroman. He provides a good example of how using proper hip load and hip lead to kind of helps sets up the rest of his body to move efficiently and effectively throughout the entire delivery. Okay, so let's start with hip load and hip lead. Okay, most of our time is going to be spent here. So when we look at hip load and hip lead in the video, all right, we want to see that back leg stay tall. Okay, you might have a little bit of flexion in there, but for the most part, it's pretty straight up and down. Okay, we want to see the front leg lift towards the back ear, back shoulder. Okay, we don't want to go in too far towards second base. But we don't want to go in straight up and perfectly straight up and down also. Okay, so back ear, back shoulder with the leg. Okay, we also want the front hip to elevate just a little bit. All right, and it also turns slightly. So you'll notice that front hip pocket turns towards second just a little bit, but not so far that his front knee goes towards all the way towards second base. Okay, so it's kind of a fine line. So that's why we just say back ear. That kind of sets us up at a good angle to start. Okay, from there we move into hip lead. Okay, so hip lead, we send the hips down the mound first. Okay, so here is what we look for in hip lead. Okay, we want to see that front hip continue to stay elevated compared to the back hip. We want to see the shoulders match the front hip and the trunk stay back. Okay, and then in the back leg, we want to see the back knee stay stacked, and then we want to see your hips stay sit back, almost like you're sitting on a chair. Okay, this allows us to activate our butt muscles, allows us to use our hips, allows us to rotate most efficiently, and impart as much energy from our body into the baseball. Okay, basically allows us to not throw with all of our arm only. Okay, so once we get to here, then our body goes into hip separation, okay, and then release and follow through. But hip separation, release, and follow through are all of a result basically of hip load and hip lead. So we have to get hip load and hip lead right for everything else to go right. Okay, so let's look at Bryson. Okay, so we come set, go into our leg lift. Okay, not bad here. All right, he's not rotating too far back. He's not really too far forward. All right, if we continue to lift our knee, we go towards our back ear. Okay, so that part's fine. Okay, but from here, he starts to lead with his hips, but you'll notice his front leg, see how it comes back down towards the ground, and then he steps forward. So he gets to here, and he steps forward, and everything goes together. So really, his hips aren't going first. Okay, and his butt's not necessarily sitting back behind his heel. Okay, everything's just going at the same time. He steps forward with that front leg, and then what happens is as he steps forward, his trunk rotates open with his front leg into front foot strike. Okay, so he lands in this position. All right, whereas we want to land in this position where everything stays back. All right, right here. Okay, so you'll notice Bryson gets almost very little hip to shoulder separation, which means he's not creating as much energy, he's not getting as much energy from his body, and then so once he gets here, the only option he has is to throw with only arm. Okay, and so we would really focus on this hip lead with Bryson, and mostly how he uses his front leg. Okay, he's front leg dominant, meaning he uses his front leg to step down the mound rather than his back leg to drive down the mound. Okay, and so because his back leg doesn't work as efficiently as it could, he doesn't get much separation, and so then he's forced to throw with all arm. All right, so there's a few other things going on, but for the most part, we would want to focus with his back leg and his hips. All right, if you have any questions about this, don't hesitate to reach out. My phone number is 402-806-1723. I always love talking about baseball and pitching. I'm an open book. I do give some lessons in the off season if that's something that you might be interested in. But don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or concerns. Okay, I appreciate your time. Thank you, and go Titans.